Hi, good afternoon, everyone. And I am going to be your host for today's webinar. And as you're aware, today's webinar topic is Agile Leadership and how we can create footsteps towards agility. Just a few things before we get started. As I have been doing with previous webinars, in case you have a question, please do feel free to ask through the chat window or through the questions window. And alongside, as we go along, as you ask questions, I would be also going on answering them as we go along. Do also raise your question in case sound is not clear or you have any difficulty in listening to the webinar. So let's get started. Now this topic, agile leadership, it has been a hotly debated topic, and in 2017, at least I foresee, this is going to be one of the major focus areas in terms of education, in terms of the work we are doing in this groundwork. So what exactly we mean by agile leadership? So this is what we are going to be talking. And because there has been enough said about leadership changes that we need to bring about and what does agility bring to the table, I'll probably not just skim the surface, but also talk about what the leaders really need to do. How do we really need to transform? So let's get started. Now, 2016 was probably one of the years or last 2 to 3 years where a wholesale of changes are happening in our world. Now, I'm not talking about just the world of work, but I'm talking about the world around us. Just to take an example, if I would go forward, we have seen a whole new set of leaders taking center stage, right from Mr. Donald Trump to Theresa May to now the newly anointed Indian cricket captain Virat Kohli. So last 2 to 3 days, 2 to 3 years have seen the rise of a whole new style of leadership and a whole new crop of leadership. But if you would notice, what is the difference between, or what is the common thing that you find between all these leaders? Right from Theresa May, when she was anointed the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, it was again on the basis of a change. When Mr. Modi came to the power in India, it was on basis of change. When Mr. Kejriwal and Donald Trump came to the power, it was again on that everyone was looking for a change. But what change we are talking about? Change from where, right? Yes, these guys presented something new, and uh, they had a different style of leadership. But what was this change? What people were looking for? And more importantly, while I talk about this politics and sport, what relevance it has to our world of work? So that is what we are primarily focusing on. So this is where it is changing. If you would see in last few years, rather than being from a directive leadership to a more collaborative leadership. So that means, if you remember, when we talk about the 90s and the early millennium, we had a whole lot of dictators, whole lot of single party governments across the world. So that is something which people were looking for a change. The whole Arab Spring concept, it was exactly based on that. Then more and more leaders are making it invitational. So rather than I am the leader and you listen to me, it is more about inviting others to collaborate, inviting others to learn. Okay. The second thing that we are looking that we were finding across the board, across the globe, that the classical leadership models, classical management models were passé. What was more important was more innovative ways of leading, campaigning, governance, so on and so forth. So that was another thing which was very important, very important. Okay, and then more importantly, if you talk about Justin Trudeau in Canada and other leaders, more from task-driven leadership to motivational leadership. So that was another change that, in general, the citizens were looking for. But isn't this the same true for our world of work also? Traditional way of management, the traditional ways of leadership, they're all taking backseat. More and more startups, as startups come into picture, more and more we are looking for collaborative leadership. Moving away from top-down management to invitational basis. So you will do something not just because I tell you to do so, because you also have an inherent interest in doing so. Okay. And in other words, I call it the march of the willing. So that is something which has been taking center stage. And I think the best example I've seen with that are the changes which are happening in Flipkart, are the changes which are happening in housing.com, for example. Those are some of the key examples you see moving away from top-driven leadership to more invitational leadership. Moving from classical to innovative, if you talk about various organizations, various corporate houses across the globe, across India, you would see the new leaders are bringing in innovative ways of management, right from Redbus to the Tatas to the Virgin Airways. If you talk about Elon Musk and Tesla, more and more leadership is required to be innovative in their thinking, in their policy making, in their decision making, almost everything that we talk about. And a leader moving away from task driven, oh, you should do this task and these are the 5 tasks you do for this week, to motivating your employees, your team members to be more productive, to chart on their own way of working, given that you have given them the goals. So that's how the leadership is changing. Now, are we aligned to this? So, as potential leaders, as I can see in the audience, we have a whole set of young Turks, I would like to say, who will be probably leaders for tomorrow. So for them, this whole concept about what we are looking from a leadership perspective, that needs to change. So are we ready for this? Are we in sync with these changes which are happening in the expectations of those whom we lead? So I'll go to the next slide on that. So what is expected from a leader? Because I know these concepts in terms of changing leadership, new age leadership, we have all heard before. But when we come on the ground, when we come to practical realities, how does the organization have to change? How does the leader has to change? So here are a few aspects of this changing leadership that I am now talking about. First and the foremost, changing from a manager to more of a mentor or a coach. Looking after not just your own task or your own vision, but also looking at the team members' interest, also looking at the employees' interest. So coaching them on the job, coaching them into different aspects of business, coaching them into aspects of technology. So that's the new paradigm which the leaders have to put into. So you're not just giving them a goal and running away, but also coaching them on how to become better at their skills, how to become best at their jobs. That's something which is very important. The next part is being a product owner. Obviously, this concept comes from Scrum, but I think it is relevant in all other organizations, all other fields also. When we talk about because they need to manage the backlog. Leaders are the ones who will be increasingly or who are even now required to look at the return on investment, to look at what is your team working upon. Are they doing their most productive work that they should be doing, and whether it is relevant to the market. So as a product owner, the leaders of today are supposed to continuously manage the changing backlog of requirements from customers, from stakeholders, from board of directors, you name it. Okay, so how to bring in the expectations of all the stakeholders, how to align them in a single stack which your team, your organization is comfortable into working, and making sure you are delivering to them as per the expectations. Making sure while delivering this, the quality focus doesn't go away. So that is the additional value that the leadership is supposed to provide. Next, leadership as a scrum master. Now, what does that really mean? And can the same person, in fact, in my class over the weekend, some of you are already there, the question was asked, can the same person be scrum master and a product owner? Now, in this role, I do say yes, because as a scrum master, the leaders are supposed to remove impediments, identify the roadblocks which the team members are facing, so that you can move them away. Okay. So that is something I see as a primary role also from a leader's perspective. Then being a business person, I said connected to business, looking at the current business reality, planning for future business, seeing how we are able to move forward. That is something which is another key prerequisite. Next comes the implementer. Now this is something which I would say some of you probably will be astonished why this makes it to the list. See, implementer being is, if I call it in other words, leading by example. If you want to implement an idea, if you want to implement a technology, if you want to work on this thing, how much prowess you have into this, right? Your team members are looking up to you, and particularly in Asia, where authority becomes an important part from leadership perspective. Your team members are looking up to you to lead the path. So if you are an implementer also, if you can implement those ideas, you can live by them, you earn that much more respect and trust from your team members as a leader. And last but not the least is the ideation guys, continuously generating new ideas, looking at ways how we can grow both our team members as well as the business, looking at ways how we can introduce new concepts to the market, looking at the ways how we can have better customer satisfaction. So these ideas probably will keep on giving sleepless nights to a potential leader or the new age leader. But obviously, wearing these multiple hats, easier said than done. And this is where your priorities will come into picture. This is where your personality will come into picture. Because not everybody is born with skills which are required for all these kind of roles. And this is where I would probably like to exhort these leaders that you need to be continuously grooming, refining, upgrading yourself to be able to gain those skills which are required for you to perform these different skills. That's next. So this is from a role perspective. This is from how I change. This is from how we work together. This is from how as an individual I change. But again, this becomes very subjective. So are there any specific tool sets? Are there any specific practices? Are there any specific frameworks which are available, which can help me get better as a leader? Or as I transform my organization, are there any specific frameworks that I can focus on which would help me grow? So this is where I would now like to talk about some of the key frameworks that personally I have been using and I've been suggesting at various forums, which I think I found as important stepping stones to leading your team to agility. So I'll now talk about those in general. But before I talk about this, I'm sure some of you have seen this diagram and I repeat it again. A lot of leaders start changing the organization by saying, oh, let's implement a specific process, be it Scrum, be it Scale, be it CMMI, be it TOGAF, be it Six Sigma. They think about process as the primary driver for change. And this is where we are talking about a key difference. Your primary change driver is the culture. So a leader has to be also a culture enthusiast. That means he should understand the culture technology, he should understand what changing a culture means. He should be able to identify what kind of culture I want to set up in this organization and what is our current culture and where do we want to move. Then you think about the structure and the processes you need to be able to build this culture. So as a leader, you need to understand that this window of change is reversed. It is not from first set up a process and then change the organizational structure, process structure, product structure to be able to match this. What we are talking about is what kind of culture you want to build and what structure, what processes you need to be able to help this. Good. So this was, as I said, the stepping stones to how do we transform. But then all is good. Everything we has been said before. This is more theory. So how do we bring about this change practically? So let's go forward and talk about some of these methods. The first one that I have been talking about frequently is called as the Prosky-Edgar method. So as a leader, you first need to drive the awareness for the change that you are about to bring. Why is there a need for change? Why do we need change, right? Or do we require change? That's the awareness you need to bring about. Then comes the desire. What is the exact need? Why are we changing? What's the prerequisites which we need? So that's where you create the desire, not just within your leadership team, not just in your management team, not just in your stakeholders, but we are talking about an organizational level desire. Yes, we all need to change. And then you impart them the requisite knowledge, where it may be trainings, it may be webinars, it may be something else that you want to teach them. Once they have got this knowledge, then you test their ability, then you enhance their ability through coaching, continuous hand-holding, working on their skill sets and shortcomings, and take it forward. And last but not the part, continuous reinforcement of those concepts, the vision and mission that you have set out for the organization, the changes that you want to bring in, the culture you want to bring in. So that's the next expectation the team members would have from a leadership, from a new age leader as we talk. So this is one of the models that you can use. If you want to Google about it, you can search for Prosky ADKAR or simply ADKAR, and you will be able to study this change management model more. Then there is another method that we have been using specific for agile environments. And what are the key aspects of a change in an agile environment? And we call this framework continuous enterprise agility. So as a leader, when we talk from a people perspective and the change we want to bring, you need to focus on continuous enablement. And when I say continuous enablement, it could be continuous optimization of skill sets, continuous optimization of processes, continuous optimization of the needs of the organization, continuous optimization of the training needs and the knowledge that they require. And then from a process perspective, planning continuously. What does my year look like? What does my quarter look like? What does my week look like? Providing a feedback both to your customers and to your team members that this is how they need to improve. This is how we can get better as an organization. That's the next part around the process. And third part comes around the technology. So if we talk specific to software development, continuous integration, continuous delivery, continuous testing, all these concepts come into picture. And as a leader, it is imperative that as you change your organization, as you bring them to a new level, you may be required to use one or more of these elements of enterprise agility, which are essential to your change. Next is a framework by none other than Daniel Mazik, who is the author of the book Culture Game. So this is something which comes from Dan Mazik and fellow coaches, my fellow coaches also. We have been working on how do we change this. Open space agility is based on the open space technology framework, which was given by Harrison Owen, where an important aspect to bring any change, as Dan Mazik calls it, is rather than a forced participation into these things, it is an invitation-based participation, that is opt-in participation. So when you are calling your first meetings for change, which we call as open space from open space technology, the leadership is not directing. This is a meeting which is happening, you have to be present. Rather, they send out an invitation to the organization, guys, this is the theme that we want to discuss about, why don't we join together? And only those who will be willing, most probably they would be willing in. And as I said, any change is the march of the willing. So the leadership has to identify a theme for the transformation. For the first meeting that we call as open space, they have to draft and send an invitation, and then they invite the whole organization, the team members, to make sure that they participate in this. And this is where the team members discuss about the various changes, various practices they want to use over a given time period. Now, in that time period, they will experiment with different agile practices, which may be as small as 45 days and as large as 100 days. And in that first meeting itself, the leaders declare that we are going to have another open space after a specified period, where again the team members can join and see the results of what we have done and plan for the next one. But it is important during this part that the leaders allow experimentation. They allow emergent leadership. They allow the next level of leadership to take charge, right? Rather than forcing their way themselves. And it is important that the leaders tell the story of their organization, how the journey has been, and where do you want to see them. And once you have been hooked into this open space, I'm sure, and if you read the whole framework and go to openspatiality.com, once the organization gets into this way of transformation, there's probably no looking back that I have seen with various customers we have been working with. This is where the leadership transforms from a top-driven command and control to more invitation-based leadership. Okay? So this is again based on Prime OS, which is an open source culture change technology. So if you want to read more about it, please go to openspatiality.com and do read through it. And so there are some of the models that I have now provided to you and mentioned to you, which you can probably use for your transformation, not just at your individual level, but an organization level. And again, as I said, These are just a few pointers. I'm sure you can find many more changes that you want to bring in to yourself and how you operate. But as a closing remark for this webinar, what I want to say to everyone present in the room, that it is the first step to making this change is to retrospect, is to introspect on what I am and where I want to be based on some of these principles I've talked about. And once you are ready for it, this is where you get started with your transformation. Now, with this, I will, and I have covered what I wanted to talk about. In case you have more questions, you can ask them now. And in case you want to reach out to us through email, the email IDs are on your screen now. But if you have any questions, I will be happy to answer them. We'll keep this webinar window on for another 5 minutes or so. So if you have any specific questions that you want to ask, please feel free to shoot it through the questions window on your right hand side on your chat box. Okay. So do raise your hand or do ask your question through the chat box in your on your right hand side. So I believe we do not have very many questions coming through. So I would like to say thank you very much for joining in. And I hope you are able to take in and use some of these concepts going forward. And till the time of our next webinar or next series, thank you very much for joining in and have a good day. Thank you.